John had always liked the quiet. His apartment complex, a modest building on the edge of the city, was the kind of place where people mostly kept to themselves. The walls were thin, the floors creaked at odd hours. The faint hum of the city outside was a constant, gentle reminder of life beyond the small square of his window. He liked it that way. It was predictable, safe, comfortable that night, however. The comfort was gone. John had just settled on his worn couch, a cup of coffee steaming on the low table before him, when he heard it, a sharp, angry voice from the apartment next door. At first, he thought it was just a television, someone watching a drama a little too loudly. But the voice was too tense, too full of emotion to be scripted. Then another voice, softer but equally tense, responded, "I told you not to do that." The first voice snapped. "You don't understand?" The second voice cried. John froze. He had never heard his neighbors fight before. He had met them only briefly friendly smiles in the hallway, polite hellos, but nothing like this. The sound made his chest tighten. It was human, raw, and unnerving. He got up and pressed his ear against the wall, though he immediately regretted it. The argument escalated, voices rising and falling, a chaotic rhythm of fear, frustration, and desperation. He couldn't make out all the words, but the emotion was clear. Someone was in trouble then. Just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. John exhaled slowly, trying to calm the pulse racing in his veins. He stepped back from the wall, telling himself it wasn't his business. He told himself that he should just focus on his coffee and the quiet night ahead. A soft knock at his door made him jump. He hadn't heard anyone come in or go out. His heart skipped. He approached the door cautiously, his hand hesitating over the handle. Another knock, lighter this time. "John." A whisper called. He froze. That was his name. He slowly opened the door. There, standing in the dim hallway, was a young woman. Her hair fell in dark waves around her face, her eyes wide and uncertain. She looked almost too small for the world, as if she had been carrying something heavy for far too long. "Can I?" "Stay here tonight," she whispered. John blinked. He took a step back. I guess. Come in." His voice sounded shakier than he felt. She stepped inside without another word, glancing nervously over her shoulder. John closed the door behind her and turned to face her fully. I'm Alara," she said softly. "I don't have anywhere else to go right now." John nodded slowly. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't want to push her. Something about her seemed urgent, fragile, and he could sense the fear behind her calm words. They sat on the couch, a small space between them. The apartment felt smaller than usual, the shadows longer, the silence louder. John tried to make conversation. "So, your neighbors?" he asked carefully. Alara shook her head. I can't talk about it. Not yet." Her voice was steady, but there was a tension that made it clear she was holding back. John frowned. He didn't like mysteries, but he also didn't want to scare her further. He reached for the coffee on the table and poured her a cup. She accepted it with a small, grateful nod. They drank in silence for a few minutes. The only sound the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant murmur of traffic. John studied her, trying to understand what kind of trouble would drive someone to knock on a stranger's door in the middle of the night. He noticed little things. Tiny sparks in her eyes when she blinked. A strange shimmer in the air around her, like heat waves rising from a summer sidewalk. He blinked, thinking he was imagining it, but when he looked again, it was still there, faint and strange. "Alara, are you okay?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be fine. I need to stay somewhere safe for tonight. That's all." John nodded. He wanted to say more, to ask questions, to understand. But something in her tone, in the way she held herself, told him that pressing her now would only make things worse. He decided to let it go, at least for tonight. Hours passed. They talked in small fragments, careful not to touch the deeper things. She told him stories about places he had never heard of, about skies that weren't blue, about cities that moved and changed. He listened, fascinated, trying to imagine such worlds. Every now and then, her eyes flicked toward the neighbor's door, and her hands twitched slightly, as if expecting something to happen. Then the apartment shook lightly. A vibration that made John spill some of his coffee. Both of them froze. "Did you feel that?" he whispered. Elara's eyes widened. "Yes," she said. "They're here." John's mind raced. "Who's here?" "The ones I'm running from," she said simply. I can't let them find me." John felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't understand completely, but he trusted the fear in her eyes. It was real, and somehow it felt like he was part of it now. The night grew longer. Every sound, footsteps in the hallway, a distant siren, the faint hum of the air conditioning made John jump. Ilara remained calm, mostly though her eyes betrayed her anxiety. She whispered instructions about staying quiet, about not opening doors, about patterns she had noticed in whatever danger followed her. John listened, following her guidance without question. Despite the fear, there was something inspiring about her. She seemed capable, resourceful, determined. And yet, in all of that strength, there was a vulnerability that made John want to protect her. By the time dawn's first light crept through the blinds, John realized that his quiet life had changed. The world outside his window, the safe, predictable routine he had cherished, felt smaller now, less certain. And yet, there was a spark of excitement in the fear, a hint that life could be more than the walls of his apartment. Ilara finally leaned back on the couch, exhaustion softening her features. "Thank you," she whispered. John nodded. "You're safe. For now." But even in sleep, there was tension in her body. A readiness that told John that this was only the beginning, and he had a feeling that whatever danger had followed, her tonight was far from finished. The next morning, sunlight crept softly through the blinds of John's apartment, spilling golden stripes across the worn carpet. The world outside was waking up, ordinary and quiet, but inside, a tension lingered. John sat at the small kitchen table, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly, while Ilara moved around the apartment with cautious grace, examining the space as if she had never seen walls or furniture before. Her eyes caught every detail. The way the ceiling met the walls, the small cracks in the paint, the furniture arrangement. She touched nothing, but her attention was intense, almost searching. John watched her, curiosity twisting with unease. Something about her was not ordinary, and the more he observed, the more he realized she was not like anyone he had ever met. "Ilara," John started, trying to keep his voice casual. "You said you're running from someone? Can you tell me anything about that?" She hesitated, her lips pressed into a thin line. After a long moment, she shook her head. "I can't. Not yet. It's dangerous. They can track me if I talk too much." "But you're human, right? You don't belong in their world. That's why you might not understand." John frowned, leaning back in his chair. "I don't understand anything yet," he admitted. "But if you're in danger, maybe I can help. You don't have to explain everything." Ilara looked at him with a strange mixture of surprise and curiosity. "You're brave," she said softly. "Or maybe foolish. Either way, it's unusual." John smiled faintly. "I've been called both before." For a while, silence hung between them. The only sounds were the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant noises of the city beyond the windows. Then Ilara spoke again, in a quieter voice, almost like a secret. "My people. We're different," she said. "We have abilities. Things humans can't do. But they, the ones chasing me, they want to use us. To control us? They don't care about anyone, just power." John's eyes widened. "Abilities?" "Yes," she said simply, her gaze dropping to the floor. "But it's not just about what we can do. It's about how we survive. And humans. You have something even we don't fully understand." John blinked. "Me, what do I have?" Ilara's eyes lifted, and for the first time that morning, she gave a small, genuine smile. "Ingenuity, creativity, instinct. Humans adapt in ways that no one else can. That's why I trust you might help me." The words made John feel both important and overwhelmed. He had never thought of himself as special, just an ordinary man with an ordinary life. But her eyes told him she meant every word. Before he could respond, a soft vibration pulsed through the walls of the apartment, subtle at first, then stronger. John jumped slightly, spilling some of his coffee again. "They're close," Alara whispered, her body tensing. She moved toward the window and peered through the blinds, scanning the street outside. They might be watching. There. Precise. John followed her gaze. The street seemed normal morning traffic. A few pedestrians, nothing unusual. Yet the fear in her eyes made his pulse quicken. He felt the ordinary world of his city, the streets he walked every day, transform into something alien and dangerous. "Alara, what do they look like?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "Not like anything you've seen. They don't appear human, not fully. They can change shape, blend with shadows. You might not even notice them until it's too late." Gosh. John swallowed hard. "So, how do we stay safe?" She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Stay alert. Listen, trust your instincts. Humans are unpredictable, and that can be an advantage. I'll show you what I can do, but you need to use your mind, your intuition. That's the key." John nodded. He didn't fully understand, but he could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him. It wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about survival. Lara moved to the center of the apartment, her hands rising slightly. The air around her shimmered, faintly rippling like heat waves over asphalt. John watched, fascinated and a little afraid. Light bent subtly around her fingers, forming shapes he couldn't name. "It's incredible," he whispered. Ilara glanced at him. "It's not magic," she said. "It's energy. Everything has energy. You just don't usually notice it. I can see it, shape it, but it's exhausting. That's why I need to hide sometimes, like tonight. And that's why I came to you." John felt a mixture of awe and fear. He realized that this quiet, ordinary woman, or perhaps not entirely human, was far stronger than anyone he had ever known. And yet she had come to him, a stranger, because she trusted something in humanity, something about his instincts, his adaptability. They spent the next few hours in cautious preparation. Alara taught John simple techniques to sense movements around them, subtle cues in sound and light that humans usually ignored. She instructed him on patterns of attention, ways to move quietly, and how to anticipate danger using nothing but observation. John absorbed everything, his mind racing with both fear and exhilaration. During a brief break, John asked Alara, "If you can do all this, why are you so afraid of them?" She looked down, twisting a strand of hair around her finger. "Power can corrupt. Even the most intelligent, the most advanced beings. They can become cruel. I've seen it. I've survived it. But I can't always fight. Sometimes I have to hide, wait for the right moment. And tonight I didn't have anywhere else to go." John nodded, understanding more than he expected. Fear didn't mean weakness. It meant caution, awareness, and survival. He realized that in this world, or in her world, humans' ordinary lives, ordinary decisions, could become extraordinary advantages. The afternoon passed, shadows stretching long across the floor. Outside, the city moved in its normal rhythm, unaware of the tension in this small apartment. And then, as the sun dipped lower, a sudden noise came from the neighboring apartment, a low hum like energy moving through the walls. John stiffened. Elaire's eyes narrowed. "They're coming," she said quietly. Soon, John felt the adrenaline surge, sharp and electric. His heart pounded, but he also felt a strange clarity. He could do this. He could help. Humans were not as physically strong or as energy sensitive as Ilara. But his mind, his instinct, his creativity, these were his weapons. And somehow, they would matter. Ilara moved to a corner of the apartment, her hands hovering slightly above the floor. John followed her instructions carefully, watching and learning. The faint shimmer around her fingers grew brighter, forming subtle barriers in the air. She explained that it would protect them for a short time, just enough to delay any attackers. They can't penetrate this for long, she said, but it will give us time. And that's what matters, time. Time. John repeated the word in his mind. Time to think. Time to act. Time to survive. Night fell fully, and the city outside darkened. Every small noise, the creak of a floorboard, the whisper of wind against the window, the distant barking of a dog felt magnified. John's senses sharpened, his instincts taking over in ways he had never experienced before. He moved quietly, followed Alara's subtle gestures, and learned to read the energy shifts in the room around them. Hours passed. Nothing attacked immediately, but the tension never left. John realized that ordinary humans, in ordinary situations, could seem invisible if they thought carefully, acted wisely, and trusted their instincts. And in that quiet apartment, hidden in plain sight, he began to feel a strange kind of pride. Alara noticed. "You're different," she said softly. "I can feel it. You're not just reacting. You're thinking ahead. Humans are unpredictable. That's why I trust you." John smiled faintly, a mixture of fear and determination. He was ordinary, but tonight that might not matter. As midnight approached, the city outside was quiet. Alara and John sat together, sharing a tense but unspoken understanding. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And in that shared moment, John realized something remarkable. Humans, even ordinary ones like him, had something special. Something that no energy barrier, no alien technology, no fear could take away. And for the first time, he truly understood why Alara had come to him. The night grew darker, and the silence in John's apartment felt heavier than before. Every second seemed stretched, as if time itself was waiting for something to happen. John sat near the window, careful not to be seen, while Alara stayed close to the center of the room where her shimmering barrier hovered, like invisible air. John's mind raced. He had never imagined that his simple life would turn into something like this Sanescape. A hidden enemy and a strange visitor with abilities he didn't fully understand. But now he felt strangely calm. Maybe fear had settled into something else, something sharper. Maybe this was what survival felt like. "Alara," he whispered, "how much longer can that barrier hold?" She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to something he couldn't hear. "Not long. Maybe a few hours?" "They're close. Very close." He swallowed. "How do you know?" "I can feel the energy around us shifting," she replied. "When they search for me, they disturb the flow. It's like ripples in water." Her voice was soft, but there was tension in every word. "They're trying to track me." John tried to understand. He didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, but he trusted her. She had survived things he could not imagine suddenly. Faint hum rose from the wall they shared with the neighbor's apartment. The same wall where the argument had erupted the night before. John stiffened. Alara's eyes snapped open. "It's starting." The hum grew louder, vibrating through the wall like a distant machine warming up. John stepped back, his heart thudding. The sound wasn't normal. It wasn't human. It was something else, mechanical, alive and cold. "Alara," he whispered urgently, "what is that?" She moved closer to him. "They're trying to break through the dimension barrier. They're forcing their way here." John's heart skipped. "Dimension barrier?" She nodded. "They don't always move like you do. They can slip between spaces, like stepping through a crack in the world. But it takes energy. And right now, they're forcing that energy through your neighbor's home." John looked at the wall, fear rising. "Are you saying they're coming from another dimension?" "Through his apartment." "Yes," she said simply. Before he could ask more, a sharp flash of white light sliced across the wall. The paint cracked. A thin line glowing faint blue appeared, as if someone were drawing with light from the inside. John stumbled back. "What is stay behind me?" Alara said quickly. The thin line expanded, widening into a circular shape. The light grew brighter, and shadows along the room's edges twisted unnaturally. Stretching and bending like rubber bands pulled too tight, John's breath caught. For a moment, The room felt wrong, as if gravity shifted, as if the walls weren't solid anymore. Something was pressing through, forcing reality to open, and then something moved inside the light. A shadow. Then another. Shapes that didn't look like humans. They were tall, thin, and somehow drifting, as if their bodies weren't fully solid. Their eyes glowed faintly a cold, pale silver. Their forms shifted constantly. Details blurring. John had never seen anything so eerie. Alara lifted her hand, and the air around her shimmered brightly, her protective barrier strengthening. A soft wave of energy pulsed outward, forming a bubble around herself and John. The first creature stepped fully through the glowing circle. It didn't walk, glided. When its eyes locked onto Alara, a soft hum echoed through the apartment, sound that made John's skin crawl. "Alara," John whispered. "What are they?" "Trackers," she answered calmly. "Hunters. They follow energy signatures, and they want mine." The creature raised an arm longer than any human arm should bits, fingers stretching into thin points like strands of silver thread. It flicked them forward, and a cold burst of energy shot out. The energy struck Alara's barrier. The barrier rippled but held. John flinched. "Can your shield hold?" "For now," she said. Her voice was steady, but he saw sweat forming on her forehead. Another creature stepped into the room. Then a third. John whispered urgently. "Alara, we can't stay here. They'll break through eventually." "I know," she said. "We need to move." "But where?" He asked. "We're trapped." Alara turned to him, her eyes bright. "John, you're human. Think. You have ideas I cannot see. Look around. There must be a way." John scanned the apartment desperately. He didn't have energy powers, or shields, or anything special, but he had something else: knowledge of the building. Practical knowledge. He sucked in a breath. The maintenance shaft. Alara blinked. "What?" "There's a maintenance shaft behind the elevator," he said quickly. "It runs through the whole building. I used to help the old maintenance guy unlock it after he lost his keys." She nodded, trusting him instantly. Yes, that could work. But getting there would be dangerous. The creatures were expanding the glowing portal, widening it. Soon they would fully enter the room. "Alara, can you move the shield with us?" "Yes," she said, "but only for a short distance. It drains energy quickly." John took a breath. "We'll move fast. Stay close." He rushed toward the apartment door. Alara followed, the barrier shimmering around them like a bubble of air. As soon as he reached the door, creature shot another burst of cold energy. It slammed into the barrier, sending a sharp shock through the air. Alara staggered. "Alara." John caught her arm. "I'm fine," she whispered, but her face paled. John pulled the door open, and they stepped into the hallway. The corridor was empty. Quiet and dangerously narrow. "Which way?" Alara asked. "Left," John said. Near the elevator, they ran, the barrier flickering lightly with every step. Behind them, the creatures glided through the apartment doorway. Their movements were smooth, silent, predatory. The hallway lights flickered as their energy spread, washing the walls in a cold glow. "Hurry," John urged. Alara pushed herself, her breathing shallow but determined. They reached the elevator. John knelt quickly, finding the small metal panel at the side. He pried it open with his keys. It popped off easily. Inside was the old maintenance latch, he remembered. He yanked it. The maintenance hatch popped open with a soft metallic click, revealing a narrow passage full of pipes and cables. Alara looked uncertain. "We can fit?" "We have to," John said simply. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind swept down the hallway. John turned. One of the creatures was near, its form gliding like smoke. "Alara, I see it," she said. The creature shot another burst of energy. The barrier flickered violently this time, almost breaking. "Alara," John shouted. "Inside, now." She nodded and crawled into the narrow passage, her body fitting surprisingly easily. John followed seconds later. He pulled the hatch closed behind them, the moment it shut. Another blast of energy struck the outside. The hatch glowed faint blue. The creatures were trying to force it open. Inside the shaft, it was dark and cramped. Pipes lined the walls. Dust floated in the air. Ilara leaned against a pipe, breathing heavily. "Are you okay?" John whispered. "Yes," she said softly. "But the barrier won't last much longer." John glanced down the shaft. It stretched into darkness. "We have to move. We can crawl through this all the way to the basement. From there, we can escape out the back alley." Ilara nodded. "Lead the way." John began crawling, pipe scraping under his palms. Ilara followed close, the shimmer of her weakening shield lighting the tight space. Behind them, a deep metallic clang rang out. The creatures had found the hatch, Ilara whispered. "We must hurry." They crawled faster. Every sound felt louder, their breathing. The creaks of the metal, the faint hum of the barrier. John's mind raced as he led them through the maze-like shaft. Finally, they reached a vertical ladder. "This leads down," John whispered. They climbed, down, down, each step echoing in the shaft. At the bottom, John kicked open another hatch. They crawled out into the basement dark, filled with storage boxes and old equipment. Ilara collapsed beside him, her shield flickering like a dying flame. "They're close," she whispered. John helped her stand. "We're almost out. The exit door is right there." They rushed toward the metal exit door. John pushed it open. Cold night air brushed against their faces. For a moment, they both breathed deeply, but Ilara grabbed his arm. "They won't stop," she said. "They'll keep hunting us." John looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't feel afraid. "Then we won't stop either." The creatures had found them. But now, they were outside, and the city was filled with paths, shadows, places to hide. And humans knew how to survive in their own world, even against things not from this world. The night air was cold and sharp, cutting across John's face as he and Ilara sprinted down the narrow alley behind the apartment building. The city felt alive with sounds, distant car horns, barking dogs, the whisper of wind between walls, but none of it mattered to them. They were running for their lives. "Ilara, how many of them are there?" John asked, keeping his voice low but urgent. "Too many to fight directly," she replied. Her voice was calm, but John noticed her fingers twitching as she shaped faint, flickering waves of energy around them. The protective shield she had carried for hours was weakening fast. "We have to outsmart them, not outrun them." John nodded, his mind already racing. He glanced around the alley, noting fire escapes, utility pipes, and crates. In an ordinary situation, these objects might seem unimportant. But in his mind, they became tools, obstacles, and weapons. Humanity's true edge, he realized, was creativity and instinct. "They can't follow us easily if we use the rooftops," John said suddenly. "Come on." Ilara hesitated. "It's risky." "You could fall. I can handle it," John interrupted. He jumped onto a low wall, testing the weight. It held. "Come on, you have to trust me." Ilara followed, her shield flickering and reshaping around her as she adjusted her balance. Together they climbed, moving across fire escapes and roof lines, the creatures' glowing forms moving below like shadows, searching for them. From above, the city's streets looked different, smaller, almost toy-like, but the danger felt larger than ever. The creatures were patient hunters. They didn't rush, but their presence was constant, chilling, like the whisper of a storm that never breaks. John paused on a rooftop, scanning the streets below. "They're not human," he said aloud. "But they don't know this city like we do." Lara tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "We know the shortcuts," John said. "The hidden doors, the alleyways, the places they can't see. We can use the city itself as a trap." Lara's eyes widened. "Humans," she said softly. "Yes, that's your advantage. Adaptability. You don't just fight, you think." John smiled faintly. He felt a surge of confidence. He had never considered himself special, but in this moment, his ordinary life, his knowledge of the streets, the buildings, the hidden spaces was extraordinary. He led Ilara across rooftops, carefully calculating jumps, pauses, and routes. She followed, her shield providing bursts of protection when creatures attempted to climb after them. The predators were relentless, but John's strategy kept them ahead. After a tense half-hour, they reached an abandoned warehouse. Its rusted doors and shattered windows offered a perfect hiding spot. They slipped inside, the heavy air thick with dust and shadows. Elara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "You're impressive," she admitted. "Most humans would panic or get lost. Think clearly under pressure." John shrugged. "It's just survival instinct. Humans have been doing it for thousands of years." Elara's lips curved into a faint smile. "Exactly. That's why you're dangerous to them. Not strong like me, but clever, unpredictable, and unpredictability is a weapon." They moved deeper into the warehouse, finding cover among crates and old machinery. John's mind worked quickly, noting every entrance and exit. Every beam, every shadow, every flicker of light could be a trap or a shield. Outside, faint energy pulses betrayed the creature's presence. They were searching systematically, their movements careful and calculated. But they were not thinking like humans. They did not anticipate improvisation, instinct, or mistakes that could be exploited. John crouched behind a large crate. "Elara, give me a moment. I think I can make them hesitate." She looked at him curiously. "How?" He glanced around. A few loose planks, scattered crates, and old metal barrels littered the floor. He picked up a plank and set it carefully against a crate. Then another barrel tipped precariously. Humans can improvise traps. Simple things. Noise. Weight. Misdirection. Elara raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. She watched as John created a chain of obstacles designed to delay and confuse. A metal barrel balanced on a crate could fall and make a loud clang. A plank set at an angle could trip or slow an intruder. Each element was small, ordinary but combined. They became a deadly puzzle for the creatures. "They're coming," Elara whispered. John ducked behind another crate. He could hear the hum of energy, the faint brushing of shadows across the floor. Then a creature stepped into the warehouse, its glowing eyes scanning for them. John waited. Timing was everything. When the creature moved closer, he kicked a small barrel, sending it rolling across the floor. The metal clanged loudly, echoing through the empty space. The creature froze, confused. Another barrel tipped over. A plank fell. Shadows twisted as the creature hesitated, unsure which way to move. John whispered to Elara now. Elara pushed her hands forward. The shield expanded, small pulses of energy pushing the creature backward, giving them a crucial few seconds. Together, they slipped past the confused predator and ducked behind larger machinery. More creatures followed, their forms shifting unnaturally. John acted quickly, kicking crates, sending objects crashing and clattering in the opposite direction. The creatures followed the noise instinctively, their glowing eyes scanning for the wrong target. Elara's energy pulses added another layer of protection, guiding them silently through shadows and openings. John realized something amazing. Humans' greatest advantage was not power, not size or speed. It was creativity under pressure, and he had that in abundance. They reached a second floor with a broken railing overlooking a lower corridor. John paused, thinking, "We need to split up. Just a little. I can lead them away. Give you a chance to escape." Elara shook her head. "No, we stick together. They'll focus if they sense separation. But you lead. I'll back you up." John nodded. He had an idea. Risky plan. But he trusted his instincts. He ran down a narrow stairwell, leading the creatures toward a series of turns, traps, and obstacles he had prepared. Elara followed, keeping her shield active, creating bursts of light and energy to confuse and misdirect the hunters. The creatures moved with eerie precision. But John's traps worked. Noise echoed in the wrong directions. Obstacles delayed their advance, and unexpected turns caused hesitation. Each time they paused, John seized the opportunity to move faster. Finally, they reached a rooftop overlooking a quiet street below. John peered over the edge. "There we can jump. The pavement is clear." "They won't follow, Isley." Elara looked down, measuring the distance. It's a long drop, she said. John shrugged. It's ordinary risk. Humans survive risks every day. We know how to adapt. With a nod, they jumped together, landing with a hard thud but unharmed. The creatures hesitated at the rooftop edge, their energy pulses glowing brighter as if calculating. Then they turned back, unwilling to follow into open human territory. John and Alara sprinted down the street, using alleys, shadows, and fences to their advantage. Every step showcased something remarkable: human creativity, instinct, and courage. They improvised at every turn, turning ordinary objects trash cans, doors, streetlights into obstacles, hiding spots, and traps. Alara glanced at John, awe in her eyes. Humans, your species is incredible. We have strength, abilities, technology, but you adapt. You improvise. You survive in ways we cannot predict. John smiled, breathless. It's what humans do. We find a way, even when everything seems impossible. They finally paused in a small park hidden under the branches of trees, the city lights shimmering faintly around them. Alara's shield had collapsed entirely, leaving her looking exhausted but alive. John leaned against a tree, heart racing, mind still calculating every movement that had saved them. You did it, Alara said softly. We're alive because of you. Your instincts, your thinking. It's not just bravery, it's genius. John shook his head. It's what humans do every day. We survive, we adapt, and when we need to. We fight smart, not just hard. Alara smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and admiration. I knew humans had potential, but tonight, you've shown me the edge. That edge is what makes your species special, unpredictable, dangerous to anyone who underestimates you. John looked at her. For the first time, he felt that ordinary people could be extraordinary. Humans weren't the strongest or the fastest, but they were clever, creative, and resilient. And sometimes, that was more than enough. As they moved through the park, planning their next step, John realized something important. The creatures weren't the end. They were a challenge, a test. And humanity, ordinary, ingenious, adaptive humanity, was ready to face it. The city was quiet now, but the calm was fragile. John and Alara moved cautiously through the streets, shadows stretching long under the dim glow of streetlights. Their escape through the alleys and rooftops had bought them time, but they both knew it would not last. The creatures that hunted Alara were relentless, patient, and calculating. Alara, John said softly, where do we go from here? She paused, her gaze scanning the dark horizon. We need a place to rest, to plan. Somewhere they won't expect humans to use, somewhere ordinary. John considered the streets around them. Ordinary, you say? He smiled faintly. We humans have a lot of ordinary places. Hidden nooks, basements, attics, tunnels. Places no one ever thinks of. Alara tilted her head, studying him. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Ordinary places can be extraordinary when you use them wisely. They turned down a narrow alley, moving past old shops closed for the night. John's memory of the city served him well. He knew secret exits, hidden stairways, and gaps between buildings that could shield them from any eyes searching from above. For hours they moved through the maze of the city, staying one step ahead of the creatures that followed Alara's energy signature. Eventually, they reached an old abandoned subway tunnel, long closed to the public. The entrance was concealed behind a rusted metal door, hidden behind ivy and debris. John pushed it open carefully, and they slipped inside. The darkness was thick, but the air was still. For the first time that night, they felt safe. This will work, John said quietly. We can hide here, plan our next move. Alara nodded, settling down on the concrete floor. Her energy shield was depleted, leaving faint sparks in the air that slowly faded. You've done well, John. Not just surviving, but thinking. Humans, your species is extraordinary. You adapt to anything, even threats we thought unstoppable. John felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. I'm just trying to survive, he said. And in doing so, Alara replied softly, You've shown me why humans matter. Why your species is dangerous and unpredictable to anyone who underestimates you. We have technology and abilities, but your ingenuity, your quick thinking, your instincts, those are weapons we cannot match fully. John leaned back against the wall, letting exhaustion wash over him. So what now? Alara looked around the dark tunnel, her eyes reflecting faint light. Now, we plan. I need to reach someone who can help me. Someone who understands humans and their potential. But first, we must ensure we are not followed. John's instincts kicked in. He scanned the tunnel, noting small openings and side paths. We can set traps, he said slowly. Simple things. They won't expect humans to improvise, and it will buy us time. Lara's eyes lit up. Exactly. You understand? Humans fight not just with strength, but with thought. They work together, stacking debris, rigging loose pipes to fall if disturbed, scattering broken glass to slow the creatures. John's creativity turned ordinary objects into clever defenses. Every step they took was calculated, every sound deliberate. The tunnel became a maze that would confuse any intruder, giving them a temporary advantage. Hours passed. Dawn approached, the first faint light of morning creeping into the city. John and Alara had rested only briefly, but the sense of safety allowed them to think more clearly. Alara looked at John. We have to move soon. They will adapt. They always adapt. But humans? Humans can think faster than most. That is your strength. You can make the impossible possible.
Yes.
John nodded. Then let's do it. Let's get you to safety and figure out how to end this. They left the subway tunnel quietly, moving through back streets and empty alleys. John's knowledge of the city allowed them to remain unseen. Occasionally, they heard faint hums or felt small shifts in energy, the creatures searching for them, but each time. John used his creativity to mislead them, turning corners, ducking into shadows, and using ordinary objects as decoys. Eventually, they reached an old warehouse near the edge of the city. Alara's expression brightened slightly. This will work. It's ordinary, unguarded, perfect for temporary refuge. Inside, they found crates and machinery left from years of abandonment. The space was large, with multiple exits and hiding spots. Alara began to set up protective energy fields, small but sufficient to warn them if anything approached. John watched her work, fascinated. You really can manipulate energy like that, he said. Alara smiled faintly. Yes, but it is exhausting. And it has limits. Humans. You rely on something different. Instinct, strategy, improvisation. That is why I trust you. John felt a surge of pride. Ordinary humans could be extraordinary in the right circumstances. That thought stayed with him as they planned their next move. Hours later, as they rested among the crates, Alara spoke quietly. I need to reach someone who understands humans. Someone who can help me harness what I've learned about your species. There's a chance. A chance we can end this without constant running. John's curiosity piqued. Who and how? I have a contact, she said. An ally from another world who has studied humans. They understand your strengths, your ingenuity, your unpredictability. If I can reach them, we might be able to fight back. John considered the distance, the dangers, and the creatures that were still hunting them. But he felt ready. Humans had survived countless challenges on Earth with thought, instinct, and courage. He realized they could survive anything, even beings from another world. The next morning, they left the warehouse. John led the way, using hidden streets, alleyways, and rooftops. Alara followed closely, her energy field small but sufficient to guide and protect. They moved with purpose, blending into the city, and noticed by humans and creatures alike. As they approached a small clearing near the edge of the city, Alara stopped. Here, she said, my contact waits nearby, but we must be careful. They are cautious. John nodded. We can do this together. They moved quietly toward a cluster of abandoned buildings. A faint hum in the air made John tense. Then a figure emerged tall, humanoid but not entirely human, with faint shimmering energy surrounding them. Ilara approached and spoke softly. "It's safe. This is my ally," she said. The figure looked at John, studying him carefully. "You are human?" they asked. "Yes," John said simply. The figure's eyes widened slightly. "Your instincts, your ingenuity. It is rare even among humans. You are exactly what we need." Lara smiled faintly. "He survived the hunt. He adapted. Humans have a potential we underestimated. This is why I brought him." John felt a mixture of pride and humility. He had done nothing extraordinary by himself. Yet his ordinary knowledge, instincts, and quick thinking had kept them alive. The ally nodded in approval. Together, the three of them began to plan. Strategies, defenses, and methods to counter the creatures were discussed. John realized that humans' true strength was not power or speed, but adaptability. Even beings with incredible abilities could be outsmarted by creativity and clever thinking. For the first time, John felt that humanity was part of something larger, a force capable of surviving, thriving, and even influencing worlds beyond their own. The ordinary human mind, he realized, could accomplish extraordinary things, as dawn broke fully. Painting the city in soft gold, John and Ilara prepared to move again. They were not just surviving, they were planning, fighting, and using human ingenuity as their greatest weapon. And for John, the world would never seem ordinary again. Humanity had shown its edge, clever, adaptable, unpredictable, and extraordinary in the face of impossible odds. The creatures might still hunt, and danger might still lie ahead. But humans, ordinary, ingenious humans, would find a way. And sometimes that was enough to change everything.